From here to 2030, that's the time we have left of the electric decade. Now, how do we deliver? How do we ramp up and accelerate? What are the investments needed? How much do we need to deploy? And what policies can drive that additional deployment? That's what we're here to discuss this morning. And with us, we have a fantastic lineup of civil society leaders, policymakers, and industry captains. We're going to hear different viewpoints in the discussion, but we want to start out with a few keynote remarks. Our very first speaker is going to be the CEO of the EDF Group, our new president, Mr. Jean-Bernard Lévy. We're also going to have a presentation of the flagship report of this event from Jean-Marc Oulanier. He's the CEO of Accenture for Europe, and he will present to us the Electric Decade report. Before we dive into the discussion, we're also going to hear from the CEO and chairman of the Iberdrola Group, Mr. Ignacio Galán. But for now, let's turn to our new president, Mr. Jean-Bernard Lévy.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, about 1 month ago, 40 international leaders took part in a climate summit organized by the United States of America. The sense of urgency was clear. It was a crucial milestone on the road to COP26. All major economies are striving to define the right pathway between economic recovery and climate policies. Among these participants, and acting as a trailblazer, the European Union is playing a unique role. The power sector is clearly at the heart of the EU Green Deal strategy. Against this background, we in the electric industry, we have a pivotal responsibility. We already have done a lot to abate carbon dioxide emissions. Direct electrification now appears to be the key enabler to meet the European climate neutral ambition. Nevertheless, achieving carbon neutrality by 2050 and at least 55% of emissions reduction by 2030, this requires a deep transformation of our energy systems. It means accelerating the shift away from fossil fuels. It means entering an electric decade. So it is a great pleasure for me to participate in this digital edition of the Power Summit as the new president of Eurelectric. Well done to Christian Ruby and his team for putting together such a high-level and impactful event despite the constraints of the COVID crisis. I also would like to warmly thank Pat O'Doherty and the members of the board for their trust and support. Together with Corina Popescu and Leonard Birnbaum, my fellow vice presidents, we will strive to impulse decisive steps to put renewable and low-carbon electricity at the core of the European Green Deal, at the center of an electric decade. And why an electric decade? Because at Eurelectric, we are convinced that electricity is the key enabler to achieve increased climate targets by 2030. We know that direct electrification means fighting against carbon across all our economies. Our sector is the key enabler for EU citizens to benefit from an affordable, low-carbon and comfortable lifestyle. This is something I'm deeply convinced of, and I will actively promote this as the new president of Eurelectric. May I say that the electric decade has already started. Indeed, back in 2018, our sector pledged to become carbon neutral well before 2045 at EU level, and we have collectively taken major steps in this direction. In 2020, renewables, the addition of hydropower, wind and solar, renewables produced 40% of the electricity in Europe, and at the same time, nuclear maintained a very robust share at 26%. The average carbon emissions continued to decrease. By 2030, at least 2/3 of the European coal power plants' capacity will be closed. This transformation already singles out 4 preliminary lessons. First, more electricity means less carbon emissions. This is an unstoppable trend. it will accelerate, obviously. This is the reason why electrification needs to be at the core of the upcoming Fit for 55 package, which will take us to minus 55% of carbon emission reduction by 2030. Second, electrification also means a more energy-efficient society. We all know that the efficiency of an electric heat pump can reach 400%. We all know that an electric car is 3 times more energy efficient than a combustion engine car. So the energy efficiency first principle points in one direction: electrification. Electrification also means growing flexibility and resilience potential within a more interconnected and integrated power system in order to integrate higher shares of renewables, supported by distribution system operators as crucial enablers. And finally, electrification also means a thriving European industry that will create jobs and will power future economic growth. For instance, building a resilient offshore wind European industry is a major way to secure highly skilled jobs in the EU. And this is not only a matter of us being convinced. Consumer trends, they speak for themselves. Let me take just one example, the electric vehicle. Sales surged across Europe in 2020, with more than 10% of the total sales compared to only 3% in 2019. For the first time, Europe has surpassed China, and we all hope that the EU will be the global e-mobility frontrunner. Electrification is also the right way to reduce emissions from the building sector. Heat pumps are indeed 3 to 4 times more energy efficient than traditional fossil boilers. But if we want to deliver the volumes of electricity needed to decarbonize our European economy while ensuring resilience and security of supply, we will need to invest massively in renewables, low-carbon generation, networks, storage, digital solutions. What do we need to get this done? Well, first, this can only be achieved with a supporting and comprehensive regulatory framework in order to make the European electricity sector attractive for investors. Let me list here a few building blocks. Well-functioning, open energy markets, supportive competition policy, a sound, sustainable finance, fostering long-term investment signals, robust carbon pricing with a sound and predictable trajectory, and of course a fair competition at EU borders that will need to implement a carbon border adjustment mechanism for electricity. Second, drawing conclusions from all reports and analyses made public by the IPCC, the IEA, or the EU itself, we need a diversity of technologies in order to reach carbon neutrality in a cost-effective way. The scale of that challenge is unprecedented. There are lots of uncertainties, and we know member states have very different starting points in the beginning of this transition. So we need an innovative and open mind with regard to technologies and solutions. This will have much more chances to help us succeed in the fight against carbon. A 100 years old hydropower station or a cutting-edge floating offshore wind, green hydrogen or low-carbon electrolytic hydrogen. Why should we pick between these? We know we need them all. So let's be modest and humble. Given the economic and technological challenges, they are huge. Let us be trustful also in well-functioning markets to decide where to invest and which technology to choose. We will need to work hand in hand with consumers, with civil society and communities to accelerate the deployment of all renewables and to ensure the continued contribution of all decarbonized electric sources. We need to seriously work on social acceptability for onshore wind, to find joint solutions together with fishermen for offshore wind. We need to demonstrate the benefits of smart meters to consumers and smart grids to consumers or municipalities in order to help all of them manage, improve their control of their consumption. Let me conclude with a few hints at the next steps. Our electric industry has a unique opportunity in the next decade to be the key enabler of the 2030 ambition. Following this Power Summit, Eurelectric will identify very concretely the power sector contribution for the Fit for 55 EU target and how to make this electric decade happen. Together with the two vice presidents, Corinna and Leonard, and all the members of the association, we will put forward the sector's key pledges towards 2030. We also will highlight how the electric decade can support the COP26 ambitions. We come from different backgrounds, from different member states, and we've learned how to combine local challenges with global objectives. Personally, I'm really excited about these challenges. I have a very clear and bold conviction, which I want to share with you. Our electricity industry can change our economy and our society. Electricity transformed the world in the 19th century. Electricity will be the key enabler of the net zero ambition, and the next decade will be the electric decade. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to our new president, Mr. Jean-Bernard Lévy, for his very clear vision and for explaining why electricity is so important for delivering on the Green Deal objectives. Now the time has come to unveil the flagship report of this event, the Electric Decade. I'm very thrilled to have with us the CEO of Europe for Accenture, Jean-Marc Aulagnier. Accenture is also the diamond sponsor of this event, so without further ado, over to you, Jean-Marc.
I am Jean-Marc Aulagnier, the CEO of Accenture in Europe. And I'm really delighted to be here today to share a perspective about the key trend that we see reshaping the energy industry. We are living in truly historic times. The energy transition implies a massive transformation of all industry. It is the largest infrastructure intervention since rebuilding after World War II. And as you know, energy transition is not really new, but today's journey has, in my view, very unique characteristics. First of all, it will be a more demand-driven transformation because decarbonisation needs to happen at the consumption level across all the economy and society. And this requires a much deeper understanding of the demand to really facilitate the transition to a more sustainable consumption. Second, it will involve many stakeholders. In fact, it requires collaboration beyond the energy industry with all stakeholders who regulate, finance, and also consume energy. And third, it is also constrained by time. And the clock is already ticking. We only have 8 years left to reach EU's target to cut greenhouse emission by 55%. To reach this goal, it will require a more entrepreneurial and also collaborative mindset across all industries. From the demand side, heavy industries like steel, chemicals, automotive, and aviation. From the supply side, the electrical industry has a central role to play to pivot energy generation and also to contribute to shape the demand. And from an investment standpoint, the financial services industry will be a key partner to support and accelerate the transition. As you all know, electricity will be at the core of the transition. The road to net zero will involve a major shift toward electricity in end use. It should grow to become Europe's main energy source in the next decade. We will see the accelerated electrification of everything, from car, housing, and factories, in order to decarbonize at speed and at scale. Also, indirect electrification and decarbonisation will play an increasing role with the rise of green hydrogen. It is a solution for hard to electrify and decarbonize heavy industrial sector like steel, concrete, chemical, feedstock, heavy transportation, and even aviation. We have seen massive momentum in the past 18 months. This is an opportunity for Europe to lead in the hydrogen economy globally. As we are entering the electrical decade, value for the energy industry on the ecosystem is being redefined. The role of energy businesses is indeed evolving, from an historical primarily focus on supply to the need to also focus on demand, and from a focus on asset management with long investment cycle to also a focus on services, on platform to connect end users. It is a real opportunity for energy companies to be at the centers of these emerging cross-industry clusters. This is where innovation, new solutions and services, and also collaboration with partners across different industries will be critical. At the core of this transformation is digitalization across the entire business. We at Accenture have been through this journey. We first said every business is a digital business back in 2013, and we also believe every business is a sustainable business. We decided to put technology and sustainability at the core of our strategy, and we are helping our clients to do the same. And if there was ever a time when this was put to the test, it was last year when the pandemic hit. Everything has accelerated, and technology become a lifeline, and the focus on sustainability become even more critical. For energy company, this means mastering digital and sustainability across the whole value chain. Firstly, it's about embedding digital and data at the core of your operation. The value will indeed be driven by the digital and data layer, which is on top of the traditional physical infrastructure. On the ability to create, differentiate services and capability will depend on how company design and leverage this digital layer to operate that physical infrastructure. For instance, in generation and grid operation, digital technology offers new opportunities for optimization across the energy system. Sensors enable real-time asset monitoring and predictive actions. And digital twins will help optimize economic and environmental performance throughout design, construction, and operation. Secondly, it's about creating digital solutions to understand and shape the demand. Since it is a demand-driven transition, there is a need to decarbonize consumption. However, demand is more challenging to influence than supply. Advanced analytics capabilities can provide a deeper understanding of customer energy needs and usage patterns. This enables energy companies to engage with them more effectively and proactively, for instance, with charging solutions for e-mobility. It also enables to define the most effective ways to modify customer energy usage and also design solutions that empower consumers to decarbonize. However, the biggest impact is in shaping the demand with industrial and commercial energy users. And there is a massive opportunity in industrial clusters. The co-location of multiple energy-intensive industries provide opportunities for scales, sharing of risk and resources, and aggregation and optimization of demand. By leveraging technology, energy companies can enable accelerated decarbonization of industrial clusters. For instance, by deploying sensors and advanced analytics to monitor, optimize, and aggregate demand across a cluster, or by using cloud and artificial intelligence to match demand with renewable energy production in real time through on-site production on virtual PPAs. And thirdly, maybe the most important, it is about redefining your strategy, governance, purpose, and talent base with digital and sustainability at the core. Digital skills will be the most needed to accelerate energy transition. According to the World Economic Forum, most of the emerging jobs in energy sector will require deeper digital expertise. And you are better positioned to attract this talent if you are perceived as a technology company that is fixing one of the most urgent planet issues. It is about aligning strategy, purpose, and branding with digital and sustainability at the core of it. It is a C-level led transformation as it represents the value and values you want to be known for in the market. I am personally convinced that we are living an historic moment. The stars are aligned. Last year, the EU, China, Japan, and South Korea all made historic commitments to achieve net zero emission. The US has rejoined the Paris Agreement, and President Biden committed in April to reduce US emission by at least 50% by 2030. Also, the numbers of commitments to reach net zero emissions from local government and businesses has doubled in less than a year. However, I also know that the magnitude and speed of changes required are unprecedented. Because of the changes across all industries and the level of investment needed, it is potentially the biggest and most complex ever transformation we need to drive. And it is also constrained by time, so there is a need to accelerate. As John Kerry said at Davos this year, to be on track with the Paris Agreement, we need to cut global emissions in half by 2030. And this means we have to phase out coal 5 times faster, ramp up renewable energy 6 times faster, and transition to electrical vehicle 22 times faster. It is really an extraordinary situation which will require extraordinary action from all industries. We have a unique occasion to reinvent our economies, aligning business opportunities with the value delivered to our people, to the society and the planet. And time to act is now as the clock is ticking. We have all an important role to play, but it is our collective effort that will drive the necessary change. Thank you for your attention, and I really enjoy the summit.
Thank you, Jean-Marc. Really, really valuable insights for what is needed in order to accelerate and ramp up in the electric decade. Before we join into the discussion with policymakers and civil society leaders, we have one last intervention, and that is from the chairman and CEO of the Iberdrola Group, Mr. Ignacio Galán.
So, good morning, and thank you for giving me this opportunity in this Power Summit. I think in your question, Europe has been the global leader in climate action for decades, from Kyoto to Paris. And with the new EU climate law, Europe can become the first climate neutral continent as well. We have already a massive consensus. Low carbon is not enough. Europe needs not only low carbon, we need zero carbon economy. Because it's a huge opportunity for Europe. First, to modernize its electricity infrastructures, to improve environmental condition and air quality, to accelerate economic recovery and sustainable growth, and very important, particularly in this moment, to create high-quality jobs in industries of the future, here at home. But now, I think it's not any longer time of goals, it's time of execution. Achieving net zero will require a massive electrification of the economy, and this means more investment in renewable generation, electricity networks, and storage. And we have everything to make it happen. Ambition and clear plan, a strong social support, technology at a very competitive cost, funds, and companies with the necessary skill and know-how. Iberdrola is one of these companies. We have been doing it for the last 20 years with investment over 120 billion euros. And we are now moving in the same direction, but faster. We will invest almost 150 billion in the coming decade to reduce even more our CO2 emissions, which today is less than 65 grams per kilowatt hour in Europe, which is 4 times lower than our competitors. with the target of becoming carbon neutral by 2030, 20 years ahead of EU targets. But we need action from all agents now. This must be the decade of delivery. We need a strong response for all public and private sectors to achieve net zero economies, transforming the energy consumption in sectors still based in fossil fuels like transport or heating and cooling, creating new alliances. Today, we are already working with leading car manufacturers or with chemical companies. Developing a strong chains to promote industrialization of Europe. Iberdrola has contributed to transform companies focusing traditional sectors like shipyard, becoming today suppliers for equipment and technology for development of offshore wind. We also are investing in new activities with huge potential to create industries and jobs, such as charging infrastructure, and working to foster the production of large-scale electrolyzers in Europe, as we did with the wind turbine 20 years ago. As I said, we have everything in our side: ambition, social support, financial resources, technology, and leading companies. And the moment is now. Tomorrow will be too late. We need to move from the nice words to action without delay. The International Energy Agency estimates that is needed 25 trillion euros in the next 10 years to transform the energy system globally. There will be a huge competition to attract capital, and the winners will be the countries who offer adequate, sufficient, predictable, and regulatory frameworks. Networks are the backbone of the energy transition, but some EU countries are limiting investment in power grids. Also, we need faster and more agile permitting process. We spend, in many cases, 6 or 7 years obtaining permit for making already renewables which can be built in a few months. If this is not changed, 2030 target will not be met. Another point important is energy taxation. Energy taxation system must be based on the polluter pays principle. And finally, public support is essential to accelerate the competitiveness of technologies necessary for full decarbonization, like green hydrogen. The Next Generation EU funds are a unique opportunity to accelerate these technologies of the future and create industry and jobs in Europe. But we cannot repeat mistakes of the past. We must avoid investment in assets that had no future. Renewables is clear, it's today the cheapest generation technologies. Increasing the share of renewables will deliver secure and cheap energy for industries and households. But we still need massive investment in renewable generation to decarbonize economies. According as well to the International Energy Agency, reaching the target set in Paris multiply almost by 3 times in just 10 years the power we need. The experience of the last year shows that significant increase in renewable penetration is possible without creating any issues in power market if we also invest in networks and storage. More transmission and distribution grid and more storage will bring renewable growth, a good service to consumers, and the expansion of electric vehicles, heat pumps to electrify the economy. Green hydrogen adoption will also multiply renewable electricity demand. We have power companies ready to invest in this transformation and leading European equipment suppliers. We just need an attractive regulation, less words and more facts. At Iberdrola, we plan to invest 150 billion euros during this decade to multiply our renewable capacity by 3 times to reach 100,000 megawatts, including more than 10,000 megawatts of offshore wind, and to double as well our network asset base. Through this investment, we help to accelerate net zero in Europe and sustain hundreds of thousands of jobs in our supply chains as well.
So now's the time to have the discussion about how we can accelerate and ramp up to deliver on the objectives of this electric decade. And with me for that discussion, I have a very distinguished panel of industry captains, policymakers, and civil society leaders. With us digitally, we have Hans van Steen, who is advisor in the European Commission in DG Ener. We have Markus Rauramo, who is the president and CEO of the Finnish utility Fortum. We have Laurence Tubiana. She's the president and CEO of the European Climate Foundation. And with me here in the studio, I also have Sandrine Dixon de Clèves, who is the president of the Club of Rome and also chair of a new think tank in the European Commission for Innovation. We also have with us Jean-Marc Aulagnier, the CEO of Accenture for Europe, who presented the Electric Decade report for us just a second ago. So welcome to all of you. But since Sandrine is here with me in the studio, let me kick it over to you first, Sandrine. How can we actually accelerate? We're running at full speed in the power sector, we feel. So how can we accelerate, and what is it those synergies we need to activate in order to get going for the new and more ambitious targets?
Well, I think there are a variety of different ways to accelerate, but let's first indicate that we need to ensure that we're not just thinking about technology. So acceleration means that we need to think about how we get technology to where it needs to be. If we could set a 30 grams per CO2 kilowatt hour of emissions kind of set for ensuring that we actually by 2030 are down in terms of carbon emissions and ensure that we drive the link towards clean electrification, that would be exactly what we would need. We're already seeing that at the international level, there's now calls by the UK government to shift out of internal combustion engines. Why can't we do the same in terms of clean energy? The other is that we clearly need to triple our investment in renewables. And you talk about this also in the Accenture report and in your calls. And I would say this needs to be done across the board, not just in developed regions, but also in developing regions. And if you get into the granularity, we're going to have to ensure that we put in place the right signals also, not just in terms of policy, but also get rid of tax incentives for fossil energy, get rid of subsidies for fossil energy and perverse market indications for fossil energy so that we also shift the market and we invest in infrastructure. Maybe one of the last points that I would add is, as we just received, actually, Christian, last week, all of the reports from the member states across Europe in terms of their reform and recovery plans, let's make sure that actually that earmarked funding of at least 37% is really going towards the investment that we need in clean infrastructure.
Okay, so I hear you say the other nations around the world are moving as well, so we need to ramp up. You're talking a lot about all the stuff we need to get rid of, fossil fuels, combustion engine cars, and so on and so forth. I didn't hear you talk so much about the renewables that we want to ramp up. Hans van Steen, I'm interested to hear. I'm sure you can't reveal everything that the Commission is going to come out with in the much-awaited Fit for 55 package, but I'm interested to hear from you how you see this challenge of really accelerating and ramping up, let's say, the pace of the transformation in the 2020s.
Yeah, Christian, thank you very much. I think it is indeed a huge challenge, and I think the first thing to really understand is that the scale of this. We're not talking about little incremental changes, evolution. We're talking really of a complete transformation of the way that we use and produce energy in the next few years, really. I mean, between now and 2030 already, and then, of course, towards 2050 in order to reach climate neutrality. So it is an absolutely massive undertaking. And I think we from the Commission have done everything we could in trying to make that scale clear to everyone, especially with the Green Deal. The good news is, I think, that the climate law, which is one of the first deliverables from that Green Deal, is now agreed. We know also very much from all the analysis that we've undertaken how we need to get to climate neutrality. We need to have at least a reduction of 55% in our greenhouse gases already by 2030, which is, of course, just a few years down the road from today. And we need to understand that energy is the critically component of that transition. So you're asking me about the Fit for 55 package, and you're rightly saying that I can't reveal everything because it is yet to come. But we're making steady progress. And I think what I can say is that this will be, and we've said that before, I know, but I'll say it again, this will be one of the biggest packages ever put on the table by the Commission in order to mitigate climate change and bring about the transition and transformation of the energy sector. So we will be looking at everything we have, all the tools in the toolbox. We will be looking at energy pricing, especially looking at the ETS, how it operates, how can it be improved, how can it possibly be extended to new areas. We will look at the regulatory measures which have to be there to accompany all this, especially the Renewable Energy Directive, but also the Energy Efficiency Directive. We know how much renewable energy we will need in order to get to 55% greenhouse gas reductions. This is considerably more than the 32%, which is currently our target, probably in the range of 38 to 40%. And we know that we need to be much more energy efficient. So therefore, we also need to review of our energy efficiency legislation there. And of course, all this has to be accompanied by an enabling framework. And we have a lot of tools there at our disposal, not only in terms of developing new technologies, for example, on the horizon, but also now with the recovery and resilience facilities. The money, which to a very, very large extent will need to go into exactly the kind of investments that are needed in order to bring the energy transition. And from the Commission side, we have identified some flagships to help member states get the right priorities in spending this recovery money. And of course, some of this is specifically targeted to renewable energy and the so-called Power Up module. So I think there's a lot that we are doing, but there's also a lot to be done. So the sooner we can put this package on the table, the better. That's why we're working, and I can actually say night and day, literally, to try and bring this out as quickly as we can, because that will be very important in terms of sending a clear signal to the people who need to invest in all of these changes that are absolutely necessary as we move forward towards climate neutrality. I'll leave it there for now, Christian.
Yeah, I want to just ask you two follow-up questions. One of them is about the scale and the build-out of renewables, which is really fascinating in its enormity. Just to give a few sort of key figures here, we're talking about a deployment of somewhere around 500 gigawatts of capacity over the next decade. Now, how much is 500 gigawatts? It's roughly corresponding to half of the power system we have today. This is enormous, and well, that's great news because it's going to help us decarbonize. On the other hand, I think it's really important to hear from you, what are we going to do about the permitting? We had the CEO of Iberdrola, who's one of the leading companies for renewables in Europe, saying earlier today, without a radical change to the permitting procedures, this is not going to happen. It's just not going to happen because it takes 6 to 7 years to get things deployed. It takes 2 to 3 months to build it, but you're waiting 6 years to get it done. What are you going to do about that? Because the fact is that a lot of the stumbling blocks are actually the EU level, Natura 2000, Aarhus Convention, many other things that are really holding this back. Do you see some action there?
Well, I think obviously renewables is a really, really key component in the energy transition, and also in terms of the electrification. We know that already by 2030 we need some 65% renewables in the electricity system. And of course, we need to make sure that this can actually be deployed. And permitting, as you say, is one very important element of that. We have been looking at that for many years. We've tried to do whatever we can at EU level to get rid of any kind of obstacles. But of course, there are also some that are at member state level where we are sort of really saying to member states, you have to simplify the procedures, you have to create one-stop shops, you have to make sure that people don't need to speak to multiple different authorities in order to get this. So I think we are doing everything we can in order to get this going, because permitting is important. Let me say, though, also that, of course, a lot of this renewable will have to go into electricity, but also in other areas, because we cannot electrify everything. So we should not forget that there are still renewables outside of electricity. And another very, very important point, and I just want to make this point, Christian, if I may, is that we need to make sure that the renewables that we actually get can be fully integrated into our system. And this is what we try to set out with the energy system integration strategy. Because there, again, there's not much point in having a lot of renewables if we cannot actually get it to the places where it needs to be used. If we are not getting, shall we say, the renewables deployed where they may best use. And in order to do that, we need to integrate our energy systems much better, also with industry, transport, and so on and so forth. So that's another huge challenge, I think, that we need to tackle in the years to come.
Thank you, Hans. Maybe this is a good segue to move to Marcus, because as Hans was mentioning, we need to integrate renewables. If everything goes electric, we also need a very reliable electric system. So I'm interested to hear from your perspective, Marcus, are the things you're hearing from the Commission, are those the ones that are top of your mind also when thinking about, first of all, of course, the transformation, but also at the same time, reliability of your services toward your customers? What are the key focus points for you when looking at this transition and what's needed?
Thanks, Christian. These are definitely key points that we are thinking about. So we see that both the electricity system, but also gas, needs to be decarbonized, and it's just a phenomenally big undertaking. Europe is using about 3,000 terawatt hours of electricity, so that all has to be made clean. And same goes for the 5,000 terawatt hours of gas. So not only do we have to clean the electricity sector, but we also have to clean the gas. Now, renewables are a great solution for that, for getting the required amount of electricity into the system. But indeed, there are then challenges. So the renewables energy will not be produced in the same places where today coal-fired, lignite-fired nuclear power plants are located. So there will be a huge need for grid investment. The numbers are tens of billions per year, and that should be accelerated. The other part that the intermittent renewables bring is exactly that, the intermittency. So then there's a big task to deal with the non-dispatchability, the need for flexibility, need for security of supply. So one thing we need to see happening if we want to get the functioning system with clean energy, with security of supply and affordability, is that we can transport the energy to the places where it is needed. And then we need the continuity in the system. So certainty that grid investments are happening. I really want to see that member states and EU are promoting that and requiring that needs to happen. But then the question is that is the current market design for electricity fit for purpose going forward? Because we're going to face a very different kind of system. I think Hans mentioned and Christian mentioned, well, you both mentioned the huge amounts of renewables capacity that will come on stream. And the question is, how do we deal with storage of energy that we have been able to do with fuels earlier? How do we deal with the flexibility? So we need a market which then sends pricing signals to promote this. And if we see that this doesn't happen by an energy-only market, then we probably need to think of a different type of market design and promote that And so we need really systemic thinking to make sure that we get the required amount of energy, electricity, at the place where it is needed and when it is needed. So I think this needs a new type of thinking. So grids, market design, and then the third element I would bring here in is the predictability of regulation and political goals. So we need to have a roadmap. What does the system look like in 10 years' time or 20 years' time, and then design a market that sends the right signals for that. I come back to the gas part because this is really important, and that helps actually partly in solving the equation. And now there's been a lot of discussion, increasing discussion around hydrogen and clean gas overall, and that's actually part of how we could solve the intermittency issue and storage and flexibility. And simply through electrolysis, convert sometimes excess and available low-cost clean electricity, convert that into hydrogen, and then convert that onwards to any other clean gases, ammonia, methanol, synthetic methane. And that would enable us to use partly the existing gas infrastructure and help us in converting also the current 5,000 terawatt-hour use of gas into clean gases. But then I come back to the predictability. So there's a lot of capital in the world. There is liquidity. There are huge stimulus packages ongoing. But really, to mobilize that capital, we need also certainty on regulation. We need that will unleash enormous amounts of capital. There are investors ready, technologies there. There are industrial and financial sponsors who are very happy to invest. We as Fortum, now together with Uniper, we are both in electricity and gas, and we have technology. The financial market has capital, and then if you have visibility and predictability in policies, then we can make these projects bankable and very attractive. So here are three cornerstones: grids, market design, and predictability.
Thank you. Just a quick follow-up question, Markus, because as you said, Fortum owns Uniper that has a big gas business. We heard about the acceleration needed from the Club of Rome, and Sandrine was saying before, let's get a benchmark or an objective of 30 grams per kilowatt hour of emissions maximum by 2030. Is that a timeline and an ambition you can sort of sign up to? Do you think that's realistic with the right investment signals?
I think technologically we are. I see similarities to the renewables build-up. If you look 10 years back, the technology was there, but for renewables, the tariffs were 10, 15 years ago they were at levels of 300, 400 euro per megawatt hour. So clearly, you could produce electricity with renewables, but at a very high cost. Now, 10, 15 years later, we are at the point where we are at grid parity with renewables in many markets, and renewables are the lowest cost way of producing energy. We still need to sort out the intermittency question. I think we are seeing increasingly forecasts and predictions that clean gas, clean hydrogen will follow a fairly similar path of scaling up and economies of scale, reaching parity. So clean gas, synthetic gas, reaching parity with fossil gas around 2030. And I think what we are discussing now globally and in the EU with stimulus packages, with incentives, ETS, tightening that, increasing requirement on a carbon-free system, then we see that catalyzing more and more activity, both in technology, in investment. So I do believe that in about 10 years' time, we will be at the point where synthetic gas is very competitive versus fossil gas.
Oh, that's very interesting. Thank you. Laurence, if I could turn to you, I'm interested to hear your take on this whole discussion about permitting. We heard earlier today a prominent CEO say, without a sea change in permitting, this is all not going to happen. We heard about the challenges in the European Commission and what they've been trying to do. A lot of the permitting also, of course, has to do with the public acceptance of these technologies. Do you see this sort of double mentality, which is that many citizens want the energy transition, but not necessarily the infrastructure and machines that go along with it, at least not if it's too close to them?
Thank you, Christian, and thank you for this invitation. And just taking the opportunity just to agree with everything that has been said, that we really think that clean electricity is, of course, the foundation for the net zero economy, and we have to electrify whatever we can in the way of the use of energy. And that's very good. We have clear objective now in Europe for 55%, of course, and the net zero by 2050, which of course is really the lodestar. And looking at 2030, as you all said, it's a massive investment in renewable energy. We have been listening to the US on the zero carbon electricity by 2035, which is really, really very close, meaning no coal and no unabated gas either by 2035. So something that is really very similar to the evolution that we will have to face in Europe. And UK going into the same direction. So I will come to the citizen piece, but it's very important that in a way the direction of the policymakers, of the companies, in a way of the people who are deciding and proposing and in a way investing, share the same targets, because that's very, very close. It's really 10 years, which will be, as Marcus said, very active 10 years about investment. So how to tackle this issue about the reaction of the society vis-a-vis clean energy? And that's why I think it's important to present to the citizen as a whole in the society all the discussion relating with that transition. So yes, there is a local issue. I will come back to that immediately. But at the same time, what kind of society people would like, what the transport electrification means in terms of life, the land planning, the organization of the society, and the same, of course, for all the different use of electricity. So if we want, renewable and clean energy is not one thing, is in a project, in the social project, which in a way feels very well into internalizing the vision of the Green Deal at every level. And that if there is this vision of the society is moving in a different direction for agriculture, for industry, for transport, for buildings, this is a way to, in a way, ubicate the clean power into a more broader societal vision. And on particular on this polarization, and sometimes it's a very political polarization, sometimes is, of course, community-based reaction against renewable energies that are really obstacles to the vast deployment we have to feel. One first is really we can still use really the built environment much more than we do. And talking of my country in France, I see that for the moment we haven't even mobilized. I know that's not the order of magnitude we need, but we don't have even mobilized the places where we should put naturally without any conflict about land use, and we haven't developed that. So I think that's the first discipline, that the built environment, the parking lots of the supermarket should be the one showing the lead on how to deploy solar panel, for example. The second element is, I think there is an element of citizen-owned project. And that's where I see the benefit of community-owned energy project. And we see in many countries there is this dimension of having the citizen willing to be the prosumers, the producers at the same time. And of course, it's the case in rural communities as well. That could, in a way, enhance the support of this project because people would not see that as an imposed project, but something they belong to. So suggestion would be that for all new projects going forward, that really the idea of having a community involved into the design of the project may be a very good way to accelerate action and permits. Because in a way, again, if I refer to my own country, you set up a project and then you make a public consultation. And then, of course, people are saying no, because they were not involved, they don't have agencies, they don't have intention. I think there is a serious effort to really diagnose and zone the different much more seriously than maybe before. There are, of course, environmental areas we should not develop renewable energy on. And in particular, of course, Natural 2000, and that a discussion with the environmental NGO. Again, obstacles are very different in nature. One, it's just to show the benefit of the communities, that's really important, but that to involve them in the design. Second is, of course, to look at the trade-off between biodiversity value and renewable energy deployment. And that we have to have a rational approach to that, and really mapping out the parts of the countryside or sea basin that has lower biodiversity value, that there can be a discussion we can start with environmental NGOs. And in a way, because what we need is not only the community-owned project, but we need, of course, a large-scale solar and wind. And I totally agree, anyway, the infrastructure element, the grid management and deployment, the integration of the electricity system is a condition. It cannot be taught in pieces. And that a major infrastructure project for Europe that can allow the more rational use of the space we have. So donification can be the starting point of the discussion with environmental NGOs. The benefit for communities is the second element to discuss places where there was a political opposition. And I can think about different regions of Europe. But in a way, everything is about the transition and the perspective of the transition. I appreciated what Marcus said on really the dynamic of investment can be started and incentivized by clear expectation, clear guidelines, the policy making. But at the same time, I would say we have to be much clearer on what the value and what the future of fossil fuel in Europe. And I'm concerned, I must say, with, in a way, the double language we have, where we still have a lot of support for fossil fuel activities. And we are still, it would be just great to follow your case on the synthetic gas, to say this is a target we have. And it's not a way to say we need gas more and more, even after 2030 or 2050. So this is just the clarity of the project, the clarity of the objective, in my view, are very important. I'm concerned in particular with this. I understand, of course, companies concerned about the stranded assets, but coal is now a stranded asset, and all the utilities present there know that. So, for example, trying to get support and in a way compensation based on the energy charter treaty, like is the case now in Netherlands on the coal phase-out plant, is a problem, because we are mobilizing resources that has to be mobilized for the future, not for the past. And that's a concern that Germany and others had. So I would like to see it's a broader solution as well as a very specific one.
Thank you, Laurence. Very good points. I think there are a few ones that I would really like to hear the European Parliament perspective on. And I'm very pleased to introduce to you Christian Bouchoy, who is a member of the European Parliament and also chair of the ITRE committee that deals with industry, telecommunications, research and energy. Very pleased to have you, Christian. We've had a discussion earlier today about the level of ambition. Laurence was touching on it, and we also heard Sandrine mention just how fast we need to move. Now, the European Parliament, in the context of the climate law, was pushing actually for even higher targets by 2030, 60%, I believe it was. On the other hand, you are a representative in the European Parliament from Romania, a country which has a different starting point and a very steep investment, let's say, hill to climb in front of you. I'm interested to hear your perspective, first of all, on let's say, the level of ambition we're talking about here, and then some of those critical points about gas, permitting, and involvement of citizens that we've been discussing.
Thank you so much for the invitation. Yes, in order to reach our goals for 2050 and also for 2030, we need to be ambitious. I would like to say that the message is very clear. EU is very much committed to the ambition of climate neutrality by 2050 and tackling climate change. And European Parliament in general and Industry, Research and Energy Committee that I'm chairing especially is backing up the efforts. So the political support is there and is very strong. On the other hand, we know that the magnitude of change is very significant as the Union accelerates its transition to clean energy. Yes, European Parliament was a little bit more ambitious than the final outcome from the negotiations with the Council. Not the whole Parliament saw the things in the same way. The ITRE committee was a little bit more balanced than other committees, let's say ENVI. On the other hand, also the political groups were a little bit different. I'm not only coming from Romania, I'm also member of the EPP group, and EPP was also a little bit more balanced. But I believe that finally the outcome was very good. Minimum 55% is something that will enable us to continue to be sure that 2050 goal is achievable. On the other hand, of course, it will not be reached in 2030, this goal, if we do not make major changes. First of all, we need to enhance innovation, sustainability, and growth. We should not forget that during our journey, we should remain competitive worldwide. So we need investments, but in the same time, we need other kind of incentives, and we would also need to protect the efforts that we are doing. That's why the carbon adjustment mechanism, for instance, would be extremely important not to lose competitivity worldwide. We need also to build a cost efficiency energy supply for industry sector, transport sector, household use. We need not forget the security of supply and the security of energy, this dimension, which is also extremely important. Of course, electricity will be the key tool in the transformation towards clean industrial sectors and society. We can use and we need to use electricity as the only solution to reduce or eliminate carbon emissions in industry and society. And we can do this by direct electrification. It was explained a little bit earlier, and also by indirect electrification. And you know the ambitions and the discussions regarding hydrogen, because direct electrification cannot solve all the problems. So hydrogen also could be a solution. Yes, I believe that we need to better capitalize on our potential and strengthen our efforts to large-scale deployment of renewables. We need, of course, to increase electricity mainly by using renewables. You asked me about gas. I believe that gas could remain a transition fuel. And this is quite important for some member states and for some sectors. For Romania, it's important in order to phase out coal. And not only Romania, I can give the example of Poland, maybe Germany, maybe other countries. We cannot change everything only using renewables. We did a lot of efforts, and some member states did a lot of efforts. You mentioned also regarding Romania, we inherited a good hydro energy from many years, and this helped us a lot to reach the targets. But also modern renewables, wind, solar and others were very much supported in the last years. And with the revision of RED II directive, I believe that all member states from European Union will increase their ambitions and will incentivize the increase of the share of the renewables. But only with renewables, and even using the nuclear energy in some member states, because others are totally rejecting this solution for the transition period, and especially for those countries where coal is still an important part from the energetic mix, it will be very difficult. That's why gas should remain as a transition fuel. Of course, if in time, in the future decades, the technologies of carbon capture and storage will maturize, will be more mature, could be less expensive than today. We could discuss also about gas after 2050, but for the moment, we do not take into account this, only during the transition period. Permitting also, it's an important issue because we cannot invest properly. We cannot accelerate what we have to do without reducing red tape, reducing bureaucracy, and incentivizing also the permitting, the access into grids, the modernization of the transport. That's why 10E directive, which we are working now in the co-legislators, is extremely important also to accommodate the new technologies, but also to boost even more the electrification and the interconnections for electricity, and of course the RRF. I think that until now, not all the countries send the final versions of RRF. It is a little bit of delay. This will not impact the implementation of RRF because you know that from the beginning, the month of May and June were dedicated to the bilateral negotiations and finalizing the agreements between European Commission and each member state. We discussed in ITRE committee with European Commission to see how we can make sure that an important part of RRF will be devoted to the clean technologies, to the new technologies, and also to those solutions which will bring us closer to the big goals. The one of 2030, at least 55% reduction comparing with 1990, and of course our big goal from 2050, complete decarbonisation, climate neutrality. So this will be an important moment to assess, to scan, and to see in the recovery and resilience facility how much the member states respected the recommendation of European Commission, European Parliament to devote an important part of this mechanism to these objectives, to this goal. Finally, this we of course we need to mobilize also private funds. We have to mobilize also venture funds and other kind of investments. It will not be enough from European budget, from RRF, from cohesion policy, also from other tools like Horizon Europe, of course, like Connecting Europe facility, even Innovation Fund, the continuation of Juncker Plan, InvestEU. This will not be enough. We need also private funds, companies, efforts, and for that, we need the right incentives and we need to send the right signals. And I totally agree with the colleagues that asked for this. Without the right legislation and the right incentives, it will be very difficult. Thank you.
Christian, thank you. I think this is a very good point to end on, because we need to hear from the European Commission in a second what we're actually going to do there. This is a recurring point. First, I would like to hear from Jean-Marc Oulanier, who's been with us earlier today. He's the CEO of Accenture in Europe, and he's also presented the Electric Decade report that we had out today. We've heard a lot about the acceleration, just how much we need to accelerate, Jean-Marc, but we've also heard about some of the challenges the companies are facing, incentives, permitting, grid build out, and so on and so forth. But I'd be interested in just hearing sort of, when you zoom out, what what sticks with you from this conversation in light of what you've been developing with the Electric Decade report?
Thanks a lot, Christian. And it was a great opportunity to work with you along many months on this topic, because as it has been mentioned, this is something absolutely extraordinary that we have to face. It's a bit of an historical time. This energy transition is absolutely massive and will require the mobilization in many ways of all the different stakeholders that I've discussed already here and many others, because what we have to do is probably one of the most and the largest investment in terms of infrastructure that we have ever seen. So I completely realize that, but I maybe want to give a different perspective, as you asked me, Christian, is what I see in the market, because I think this is not only something that we deal with the energy sector, but I think all of us as citizens, as consumers of energy, and frankly, all the different industries have also to play a role to accelerate this transition. And very much in my view, this is also a kind of demand-driven acceleration that I see, where the people and the consumers and the industries that are consuming energy needs to understand the new demand and the way they can consume energy in a more effective way. And I can give a couple of examples around maybe what I see. When we talk about the residential consumer, all of us as citizens, it is clear that COVID has been in some way an acceleration of that. More and more consumers are willing to engage on energy transition. They are more and more sensitive to climate change, and they are more and more ready to buy solutions that will consume less energy, or at least that will be more energy efficient. So there is certainly something around this. And I believe that technology like digital can help to understand the pattern of consumption and help the energy provider to provide solutions and services that are contributing to the efficient energy that we need. But if you talk about the industrial sector, I think they also have a role to play to change the nature of the demand in order to accelerate that transition. All of us have heard about what's happened in construction with smart building. All of us have heard about what's happened in the mobility industry, especially with electrical cars. That's probably going to change the way we deal with mobility. But I think it's true across all the industrial sector. I have the opportunity to talk to many CEOs across Europe, across all the industry. They are all looking how they can build a lower carbon economy in their own specific industry. It's true for transportation. It's true for construction. It's true also for all the heavy asset industries. It's true for retail, consumer goods. They are all looking at ways to change the nature of the demand in order to be more efficient in terms of carbon emission or greenhouse gas. And let me give you an example of what we do. The same here, technology can help by measuring, carbon emission, by trying to predict the kind of energy consumption you need and try to optimize the way you consume the energy that you need to run your business. This is also a lot of technology, a lot of digital technologies that can help you to do that. And there is also now with hydrogen, a lot of other opportunity to change the nature of the demand, because some of the industrial sector are in the category of hard to electrify, as we say. But maybe green hydrogen can give a perspective to those heavy asset industry, maybe not to move directly to electrification, but to move to green hydrogen in order to contribute to that lower carbon economy. So my perspective is, I'm very excited and I'm very proud, I have to say, being a European citizen, to see the mobilization of the energy sector, to see the mobilization of the European Union and all the different stakeholders that have a role to play to accelerate this transition. But maybe my contribution is that everybody has a role to play, us as citizens, but also us as running businesses, because we have to contribute to change the nature of the demand to be more energy efficient first, but also to drive a different nature of demand to accelerate that transition. And as much as we do as Accenture, we believe digital can contribute to that, but it is a mobilization of all the different stakeholders that will make it happen. The one that we have heard, on all of us as running businesses and citizens, we have a role to play to change the nature of the demand and accelerate that transition, because it is demand driven, it's going to go even faster.
Thank you, Jean-Marc. This provides an interesting link to some of the points that Laurence was making about involving people and hence also getting more, let's say, pace The other thing that I pick up from this is the part about everybody being involved. We've had this discussion about the role potentially of PPAs as also a driver of long-term investment signals. But I'd like to kick over one question to Hans, because we've really heard from many sides now, there is this issue of long-term investment signals. We had that discussion as part of the clean energy package. We know that renewables need to be dispatched first because they're the clean, but we also know that we're relying on a backup fleet to basically have a secure and reliable electricity system. Those plants will dispatch less and less as more renewables come in, and hence there's a business model dilemma for those assets that Markus was mentioning. Are you in any way analyzing these trends, the downward pressure on power prices as a consequence of ramp up of renewables, the potential tools that can be deployed to ensure continued reliability? Is that in any way part of the thinking of the Fit for 55?
Thank you, Christian. And I thought there were very, very many interesting points made by the other panelists, and I would love to comment on some of them, but probably you don't want me to because we don't have time to do that. But I think the one point which I would like to say is this thing about citizen involvement in the energy transition. I mean, as we see it in the Commission, this is also critically important. You cannot steamroll the energy transition through. It has to be driven also by ordinary people who are affected by all this in their everyday lives in so many different ways. And unless we manage more effectively to bring this message across and to get an active engagement by citizens, it is going to be much, much harder. And this is also, I think, behind some of these discussions about permitting and stuff. I think some of the things that Laurence said about bringing in energy communities where you actively engage citizens, for example, in renewable energy development, is so important, and it holds an enormous potential to deal with many of those issues that come across in those areas. The other point I wanted to make is a thing which very often is a little bit forgotten in discussions like this, which is energy efficiency. And that is going to help us also deal with many of the other challenges that we've been talking about, because energy efficiency is the precondition for actually getting to 55% reduction of greenhouse gases in 2030 and towards climate neutrality in the middle of the century. It is an illusion to think that all these nice green, clean technologies will bring us there so we can just continue using energy the way we do. No, we have to be making much, much stronger efforts on energy efficiency in all levels, starting probably with buildings and the way we use it in the way we live in our homes. We've come out with the renovation wave. We will follow up with a review and revision of the energy performance of buildings directive towards the end of the year. So that is part of the Fit for 55 package, although it will come out a little bit later on. And we're looking now at public buildings, in particular in the energy efficiency directives. So all of the energy efficiency things will be so important, because otherwise it's simply not going to happen. Now, on your question, Christian, about shall we say the non-renewable side of things, and of course we recognize that renewables will only come in gradually. The good thing is, of course, that the cost of renewables have gone down so dramatically in recent years that they are now able to compete with other types of energy in a level playing field, so to speak, which already helps a lot. But it is true, of course, that there will also be issues related to reliability, base load, which in many cases can be provided by renewables, because renewables are not only wind turbines and solar panels, it's also many other things that can actually provide base load. And then at the same time, we will have much better demand side management that can help us also balance out. And we have made important changes to the electricity market design with the Clean Energy for All Europeans package, where, you know, we had this slogan, a market fit for renewables and renewables fit for the market. So we've come a long way, but we still, and I think it is part of the thinking, but it's not, and I will probably not say too much there in terms of saying things I can't say about the Fit for 55. It's not at the center of that package. We think we've dealt with a lot of it through the Clean Energy for Europeans package with the new energy electricity market design in particular. We've dealt with the whole issue about capacity markets and the analysis around all that. We're not saying that this is going to be easy to deal with, but we think that there is already a lot in place that will make sure that we can move towards a much higher share of renewables in the electricity market. At the same time, of course, have still some other generation capacities out there available as we move forward.
Hans, thank you.
Leave it there, maybe.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I want to turn over to Sandrine because she's here with me and been standing very patiently around. I'm very curious to just hear very quickly from you, Sandrine, your take on the key points that have really triggered you in the discussion. And maybe you want to kick one question back to the panel if you're interested.
Thank you for that. And thank you to the panel. And I think you've hit on many of the remarks that I would have made as well in the beginning. One is that clearly, and Marcus, you talked about the fact that this is a systems approach. And several of you indicated that we need to optimize the different aspects of the system. The fact that we need to look at transport, mobility, urbanization, as well as industrialization and power, all at the same time. And clearly what we've done is we've also produced a compass to do exactly that, Christian, which we actually presented to President von der Leyen. How do you look at the optimization? How do you ensure that you have the right policy signals across the board? Because there are dysfunctionalities in those policy signals. The second is, and this is coming out of the new report from the Energy Transition Commission on clean electrification, and also their new hydrogen report. The fact is we do need long-term contracts. You talked about long-term contracts for clean power. That has to happen immediately. We also have to facilitate the permitting. We've seen in the United States it's much easier actually to put forward, immediately plan, get in place the infrastructure necessary and move on with it, bogged down in bureaucratic detail at the European level. So we do have to do that. The citizen has to be fully engaged in this process. And that is about future envisaging. And let's remember that post-COVID, we can tap into the consciousness of the fact that this has been the greatest transformation ever in cities, in communities, where people have understood the importance of what is essential. Power, having access to power, clean power, is for them becoming increasingly essential. We've actually surveyed citizens across Europe, and they don't want to go back to business as usual. So I think the time is ripe. We clearly need to look at the incredible report from Accenture, from the Energy Transition Commission, which is saying all of the right things. We can get there. We can have green hydrogen. We've got the capital. But we need to break down some of those tensions that are not enabling us to move forward fast enough between people, planet, and prosperity, not foregoing the planet for people or prosperity, and ensuring that actually we optimize the entire system. I think it's an exciting time. I think that together we can do this. We do need to bring together all of the key actors. The short-term levers are ensuring those long-term contracts, breaking down the barriers to permitting, ensuring that we are also putting in place the just transition mechanisms to enable the proper green industrialization of some of those areas that will have to shift, giving them the upskilling opportunities, and then moving forward and bringing citizens onto that journey. Let's co-create, let's co-design, and we're already starting to do that through Horizon Europe and the work that we're doing also in terms of working with universities to ensure universities also to be part of the solution of the future, and the youth. And let's close with that, because we know we're accountable to the next generation, and the youth are asking us right now, we want to be part of the solution, we want to work with you, but don't tell us that there aren't any solutions. And we've just heard that there are plenty.
Sandrine, I think this is a perfect note to end this great debate on. I can hear with you we have not only a renewable source of energy, also a dispatchable source of energy that we can turn on. And with that, I'm confident we can get to 2030 from here. Thank you to all the participants. This has been a great debate. We will be back with more throughout the summit. But for now, let's take a short break.